And as promised on the business segment, today we are starting off with our interview. When you hear about entrepreneurship, what comes to mind? I'm sure that you'll be talking about capital, but before you get to that capital, what is the process? What are some of the challenges and what are some of the successes that you'll be aiming for as you enter this terrain that not so many people unfortunately make it, but people like Cheryl Itemere here have been able to make it in that particular sector. Welcome, Cheryl, to our studios.
Thank you.
She is the Entrepreneur Experience Manager Endeavour in Kenya. So when we're talking about entrepreneurship, the way I'm telling our viewers right now, it's all about the capital. But before you got to that situation where you get the capital, what are some of those steps, key steps you took to get that capital?
Thanks so much, and thanks so much for having me here today. By way of introduction, I work for Endeavour Kenya, and Endeavour is a global community for high-impact entrepreneurs. And we define high impact as entrepreneurs that are looking to scale faster, change the different economies that they're working in, as well as pay it forward. And by pay it forward, we mean, mentor the next generation of entrepreneurs that are coming up, as well as investing in them. And so you pose a very good question around, beyond capital, what else do you need to have? And first of all, who's buying your product? So who's the target market? Have you validated that this is a need that they have and that they are looking to purchase is one. Have you figured out what size of the market you're trying to go for? Is it just Nairobi? Is it the entire Kenya? Is it East Africa? Is it Africa as a whole? And secondly, do you have a prototype that's out there that you're getting first-hand feedback, where you can see, okay, with what I have out there, with the users that are experiencing this product, how much can I sell it for? Who should I really target as well? And how fast can I get it out in the market? Then you can start discussing capital, because then capital means, are you going through the banking route, the investor route, grant route? Yeah.
Indeed, what you're saying is skills and knowledge are very critical at this stage.
Yes.
So before you even get to that particular situation, you've just talked about looking at the market, understanding your audience and the people and your consumers that you're about to sell your produce. So getting those funds from the banks, because the banks, circles, and other cooperatives are the ones who are giving you these funds. So is there a bigger challenge there in accessing those funds?
There is, and there's a couple of challenges that entrepreneurs experience, access to capital being the biggest one. And beyond banks, there's VC capital, which is venture capital investment, where they take a stake in your business and then give you money for that. There's access to grants. All of that is a challenge. I think the main question entrepreneurs need to answer is, similar to what I just mentioned, who are you targeting? Is there a market for this product? Secondly, if you're going to the banks, they want to see positive cash flows. Like, how is the business going? Because, there's a risk. If I give you money, how will you pay back? So they want to be able to understand that if I give this person this amount of money, I can see that the product is moving at this rate in the market. Then we can have the conversation on access to debt. But there has to be a lot of plays around. So you have to prove that this is actually working in the market to be able to access that. So there's a lot of bootstrapping, which means you use your own money to prove that value to then now go seek investment.
You've just raised a very critical point when it comes to debt, because actually, in essence, this is what you're getting, it is debt. So how do you manage and ensure that you have enough structures in your company before you manage that particular debt itself?
That's a very good question. And, there's a couple of things you have to keep in mind. First of all, with the debt that you're seeking to get, how are you going to be able to pay it back? The terms of the debt in tandem with your business. So if the bank is asking you to pay every quarter, will you have the money every quarter to pay it back? That's one. Do you have the capacity to actually take this debt and pay it back as and when you need to? So what I mean by this is you're using the debt for enhancing the business and not necessarily closing gaps, if that makes sense. Can you figure out how the money will be paid back? And then there's an element of understanding who you're getting money from. Do due diligence, because you don't want to just take any money from anyone and then get burnt down the line. So there's research on both sides, as well as the banks are doing research on entrepreneurs. You also need to do your own research and understand, if I borrow from X bank, are the terms valuable enough for me and my business? And this is beyond banking. Even venture capital, grants, every type of investment into your business has certain clauses that you need to be mindful of.
And why is it attractive to us, especially Kenyans and Africans, when we try to enter into this sector called entrepreneurship? We like debt financing, but in terms of equity, with the opportunity you get without the banks or even the cooperatives you're talking about, so is there equity between you, the entrepreneur, and the banks themselves, how are they in that particular area, especially based it from the experience that you've had?
Yes. So we'd love to see more banks actually giving capital to entrepreneurs.
Yes.
But I mean, this is not your traditional SME. So we have startups in the ecosystem that are building novel ideas, solving big problems. We'd love to find a way for banks to curate funding for that. It's still a nuance, you know, the startup space in Kenya and is it is in its infancy. And so I think over time we'll be able to figure out how to access and close those gaps.
Yes.
But for now, you know, just make sure your basics are good. And at Endeavour especially, we're trying to figure out how to connect entrepreneurs to the right kind of debt.
Yes.
So this is something that we're doing very intensely this year.
Yes.
And I think over the months to come, you'll see a lot more written material or events from us connecting the two together. Yeah.
And aside from the partners, you also work with your institution as well.
Yes.
When it comes to debt financing solutions, because that is where you need to teach more of the entrepreneurs, because why would I take the risk of taking a couple of millions from the bank and yet I do not have a solution of reservicing that particular debt? So do you offer those solutions?
We do. So we actually have a scale-up program that we run at Endeavour, which takes entrepreneurs through a cohort-based learning journey, which is about 6 to 12 months. And we touch on a couple of different topics. Raising capital is one of the main ones. And it's demystifying between equity, capital, debt, grants, and how all of these play into the business and your longevity, because you may take too much debt that you're over leveraged. You might take too much equity that you're kind of constrained in terms of ownership of the business, and you might take too much grant money that then these other two players don't feel like you're able to pay back.
And of course, over-reliance on debt is something that is a big problem.
Exactly.
So what are the dangers of those?
There's a lot of danger. So one, are you able to pay back? So if you're not able to pay back, you're looking at a business being closed down because of an inability to pay back that debt. There's also another danger around what's the purpose of the debt? You know, do you understand why you're taking it? And similar to what I had mentioned previously is, does your business align with the repayment cycles? If you're taking debt, do your equity investors also understand that you're taking debt and what the value is that for? So there's a lot of nuances, and it also depends on the type of business that you're running. But I think the main one is, do you need it and can you pay it back?
And that, with that in mind, with the current economic climate in Kenya, especially in Africa, is the government, especially here in our country, initiatives or programs they have started to incentivize debts in the country?
Not that I've heard of. I would love to see more. And I think this is a place where ecosystem enablers like Endeavour come in, where you speak to the different government officials and let them know of the need on this side of the ecosystem and urge them and probably even give them guidance on how best they can plug in.
Now, given that we're entering the final leg of our conversation here, there's a young entrepreneur who's watching you right now. So that person is asking, how did Cheryl get there? And of course, first of all, it requires confidence for somebody to go there before you even come up with a business proposal to take to the banks, because we all know how banks play out at the end of the day. But so what one advice could you give that entrepreneur who's watching you right now?
I think I'd say, based on my own experience as an entrepreneur as well, would be experimentation. Whatever you're building, experiment with your target audience, experiment with potential audience or potential market that you're trying to reach, get valid results, so validate that whatever you're building is actually a need and not something that you saw someone doing that you wanted to copy paste. And then document all of these things, participate in different networking events to understand how people actually access debt and or funding, or even the other knowledge that they need to run good businesses, and just talk to people. Talk to me, talk to other ecosystem builders. There's a lot of advice and knowledge out there. You just need to open your mind and plug in, basically.
And then finally, what will be your key proposal or recommendation, not just to the government, but to investors who are coming to the country and who possible investors who are watching us right now? What will be your recommendation or proposal? One key area that, if it was rectified today, we could be seeing many people being entrepreneurs. They don't have to rely on college jobs.
I think one thing I'd mention is running businesses in Kenya is very different from the West. In the West, I mean the UK or America.
Yes.
So as investors are coming into this market, you need to understand the different nuances within the Kenyan space. 3 months for us is not the same as 3 months in the US. And so kind of like taking a step back to understand this market and align accordingly.
Yes.
And then also being open to the different novel ideas that are solving problems for us. They might not make sense for you, but they might make sense for this target market. And so just a little bit of understanding around that would be highly appreciated.
Thank you so much. That is Cheryl Itemere, an entrepreneur experience manager, Endeavour in Kenya. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. I hope some of the viewers who are watching you right now, they've gotten at least one or two before they become entrepreneurs such as yourself. And of course, that is the sector when it comes to entrepreneurship. Aside from getting the capital, you also require to have the knowledge and the skills to carry out such businesses, ventures at the end of the day, so that we can stop over relying on white-collar jobs at the end of the day, with the cases of unemployment ever so high, with the government also trying to combat this particular situation.